Hello and welcome to the Movie Thoughts Podcast. I am your host, Dominick, and welcome back again, people. What has changed? I haven't done an episode in a couple weeks. Well, guess what? Your man got married. That's right, I'm wearing a ring. It's pretty cool. And yeah, that's it. That's all that happened. I went on a honeymoon. I disappeared for a little bit. I disconnected from the world. But I am back again. Okay. How's everybody doing? We're in the swing, right? We're in the swing. I think the last movie I did, new movie, I did was Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which was pretty damn good. You can go back and listen to that episode. And then I did a From the Vault. I dropped a little From the Vault. As you know, I do those sometimes. They're podcasts me and my brother did years ago on a previous podcast. And it was an episode, I think we did Kindergarten Cop, the Arnold Schwarzenegger episode. I got to go back and listen to that. I'm sure there's some funny stuff in there, and there is. And that's why I post it. I've listened to it before in the past. But yeah, that's a little bonus episode. But yeah, this is the first real episode since I got married. As I said, married life. Yeah, you know how that goes. So we're back, and, new movies, right? And it's funny because the first movie I saw as a married couple now is the movie I'm going to be talking about today. And that movie is Fast X. And we're going to jump into the Fast and Furious franchise. My love-hate relationship with the Fast and Furious franchise. I mean, get to it in a second. I think a lot of people probably feel the same way as I do. And the suspension of disbelief that you have to do when you watch these movies. Vin Diesel. We're going to do some Vin Diesel, right? We might as well do the whole episode as Vin Diesel. This episode's about family, and it's about Fast and Furious movies. Vin Diesel just keeps getting, grumble. His voice just becomes more of a grumble as these movies go on, and I don't know, maybe we need to subtitle him. Maybe we need to. Vin Diesel himself in real life talks a little bit more clearer. So like Dominick Toretto is more like, barbecue, Corona. Vin Diesel, if you see him in interviews, he's kind of got that, but he's more like, well, this is the Fast and the Furious movie. He's got kind of like a softer voice. It's almost like James Gandolfini with The Sopranos, Tony Soprano, where he was like, and then when you heard him talking in real life, James Gandolfini talked more like that. So it's interesting, but I don't know why I went on that rant. Just wanted to show you my little impressions. But before I talk about Fast and Furious, because I always forget at the end of the episode, I also do another podcast with a friend of mine, Ryan, where we talk about Rambo movies, and that is the It's a Long Road podcast. And right now we're up to the 4th Rambo installment. We're delving into that scene by scene, essentially. It's a fun podcast. We go back and forth. And he just dropped the newest episode of that. So the It's a Long Road podcast, a Rambo podcast available on iTunes, Spotify, all that stuff. So go check that out. It's a good time if you like what you hear in this podcast and you want to hear me and him talk about Rambo. So like I said, I always forget to drop that at the end of the episode, because by the time the end of the episode, once my brain is fully consumed by Vin Diesel and the Fast and the Furious movies, I can't remember things. But yeah, let's get into it, right? Fast and the Furious. This franchise, can you believe that this franchise has 10 movies? 10 fucking movies. I can't even believe it. I mean, 11 if you count the spinoff, the Hobbs and Shaw spinoff, and, there's obviously going to be a Fast 11. We'll talk about if there's going to be a Fast 12 a little later, but this franchise is such an interesting one because it was essentially, at one point, it was essentially dead and buried, right? Could we say that if we count, the first string of movies, meaning Fast and the Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious, and Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. At one point, these movies that was kind of it. I mean, I really don't think they were making the money that the original was making, and it's kind of like getting their back against the wall, and then the thing gets re-fucking-juvenated. and it changes genres a bit, and then it becomes fucking 10 movies and a spinoff, and an 11th movie, as I said, and possibly a 12th. It's crazy that we live in a world where there's 10 of these. Are 10 of these movies necessary? Very questionable. In the world of sequels and movies we want sequels to, and maybe movies we didn't get sequels to, we got 10 Fast and Furious movies. And it's crazy. But let's break down, let's just get into the history of Fast and Furious a little bit before we talk about this new movie. I'm going to delve into, like I said, for a little bit. So, if you're, fast forward if you want to listen to the actual thoughts on the new film. I'll be light with spoilers as far as the new movie. But I will say, because I may get into spoilers depending on how long this goes. But I will spoil the rest of the movie. So if you haven't seen the rest of these fucking movies, I'll probably spoil significant portions of it as I talk about it. But let's go. Let's go to the first one, right? And I'm going to be breaking down the titles of these movies too, and just what transpired, right? The Fast and the Furious, the original. I guess you could say it's a classic, right? I guess you could say it's a classic. I mean, way back in 2001, I remember this movie. I remember the marketing. I remember seeing it. Now, I didn't see it in theaters, but I did pick it up when it came out on DVD. And I'm currently looking at that original DVD that I still have. It's a Universal Collector's Edition. And it's got, the black, poster and everybody's face on it, right? It's got the green and yellow car on the front. And I remember renting this movie. I bought it. It was a blind buy. And I bought it with my brother. And we watched it. And it was enjoyable, right? It's enjoyable. Fast and Furious is an enjoyable movie. It's basically Point Break. The undercover cop and stuff like that. Just no skydiving, no Patrick Swayze, no Keanu Reeves. But it's a very similar plot to that movie. But it is fun. It definitely amped up the street racing, and it's, had a lot of movies follow it that were trying to be it, and whatever, right? Then years later, you get Too Fast, Too Furious. That's right. Like this movie still has one of the most ridiculous, greatest titles to a sequel ever. That you could just, anytime you think of a sequel to a movie where you can't think of a title that it should be called, putting twos in front of it is just great. Right? Too Fast, Too Furious. And this is the beginning of the titles just being absurd, right? That's one thing about this franchise, love or hate or however you feel. The titles of these fucking movies, especially when they get past 5, even 4, which I'll get to in a second, but they become redundant. They become like, I don't know, just keep it uniform, You couldn't really call the third one 3 Fast, 3 Furious. It kind of lost the appeal at that point, but once the titles start becoming almost the same as the other titles, it just gets confusing, right? I have this problem, speaking of the Rambo podcast, I have this fucking problem with the Rambo movies, right? Because it's First Blood, then it's Rambo First Blood Part 2, then it's Rambo 3, then Rambo 4 was just called Rambo, which is absolutely fucking terrible. And then Rambo 5 was called Rambo Last Blood. And it's like, just put the numbers. I understand, and I've said this on the podcast, I understand. I think I talked about this when I was talking about Scream 6 and stuff like that. I understand that, you don't want to alienate somebody who hasn't been keeping up with all the movies, but just keep the numbers. I mean, at this point now, with the Fast and Furious movies, they're fresh in everybody's mind, so they do keep the numbers, but they jump around a little bit with titles. But I'm not going to get lost in the whole title thing. But Too Fast, Too Furious, not really my favorite in the franchise. One thing is Vin Diesel at this time didn't want to come back and do this movie. He just wanted to, he didn't, I don't know if it was a money thing or he just didn't want to be involved. He was doing other things, Chronicles of Riddick and Pitch Black and all that fun stuff. But he didn't come back for this movie. So it's Paul Walker again, and this time it's Tyrese. Now, Ludacris is also in this movie. Tyrese, I'm not really a big fan of the guy. I don't know. I like Ludacris better as an actor. Tyrese, for me, his jokes and stuff like that, they don't really do it. This movie's okay. It's like, it's a B movie. Now, right here is where, I remember watching this movie, yet again, did not see it at the theater. I think me and my brother might have I want to say we ordered it on like pay-per-view or something back in the day. I don't even remember when I saw it, but you got Tyrese in there. He's obviously a different character than Vin Diesel is. He's more the humorous character and stuff like that. But another bald guy replacing one bald guy replacing another, right? And it's a fine movie. I mean, it's okay. It's not my favorite, but at the same time, as I was saying, this is kind of where I thought this franchise was kind of donezo. And listen, if you would have told me, even how old was I in fucking Too Fast, Too Furious? Too Fast, Too Furious comes out in 2003. Probably, what am I in? Who am I? How old am I? I don't know. I'm probably in intermediate school, right? Yeah, probably about to go into high school. If you would have told me that like this franchise was going to go up to 10, I would have never fucking believed it. Because you think about the movies that get, into those high things, not counting Star Wars and Star Trek and whatever. But most of the time, movies that get, and James Bond, of course, we're not going to count because that's like a franchise that constantly is changing its lead. But as far as movies that get into the tens, it's usually horror movies, right? It's usually, the classics like the Halloweens and the Friday the 13th, the Nightmare on Elm Street. You had more recently had the Saws that got that long. But you don't have a franchise really that has this longevity. So, like, to say that at that point you came back in the time machine with Doc Brown and Marty, Dom, Fat Dom from intermediate school. It's the Fast and the Furious movies. They're gonna go back. They're gonna go up to 10. I wouldn't have believed it. I would not have believed it. And the next one that came out after this would have cemented my disbelief, because the next one is Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, which is a departure from the rest because, new characters. Now, this is an interesting one because this is the first one that was directed by Justin Lin, who would go on to direct more of these and be a big part of this franchise going forward. But Tokyo Drift is a film that, as I said, new characters, new setting. One of the major characters you're introduced to here, the one that's going to be important, is a character named Han. And as you all know, he comes back. Now, Han fucking dies in this movie. Okay, dies, and that's the big notable thing that happens in this film. Tokyo Drift I saw years later. I'm trying to think when I saw Tokyo Drift, because it was like way after it came out. I don't think about years, but I didn't see it in theaters. I didn't see it. I didn't go. Maybe I rented. I might have rented it in Blockbuster. I might have caught it on like HBO or something, but I didn't see it until way later. And at this point, yet again, the franchise to me, even after seeing this one, was kind of like, all right, it's just whatever. It's not something I look forward to all that often. I mean, the first one was good. The second one was and this one was like different, focusing on the drifting thing, the racing, set in Tokyo and stuff like that. But the interesting thing about this one is at the very end, you had Vin Diesel make a cameo, okay? And he's all like, and he's in the car, and he says something about knowing Han. And as I said, which don't forget, Han dies. And then the movie ends. Now you come to find out later that Vin Diesel does this. Partly, he did this for free as a favor, but in exchange, he got the rights to like the Riddick movies with Universal. So that's a fucking pretty good deal he got. Not that those movies are like huge money makers, but he got the rights to that film. Now, in 2009, which is a pretty big leap, honestly, right? We're talking, 2000, yeah. So the first one, I'm thinking of Too Fast, Too Furious. So this one's in 2006, Tokyo Drift. Then in 2009, we get, yet again, enter the beginning of the title confusion. We get Fast and Furious, okay? This one always makes me laugh, the title, because they simply removed the and the. They simply removed those three words, or not, well, actually, they just simply removed the thes, better yet, okay? And they kept Fast and Furious. I hate this shit. I passed the movie. I hate when they do this with titles. It drives me fucking crazy. Listen, when these movies come out on Blu-ray, if you look at their spines a lot of the time, and they have the number next to it, or they started doing like the number in the front, like 1, 2, 3, 4. They have to do that because it's so fucking confusing, especially to a new audience. Remember, like, I hate that. Listen, the internet exists, and you could go at any time, and you could look up which Fast and the Furious came first, and this and that. But if you just, I come from the olden days, right? When you'd be walking around Blockbuster or a video store, and you have to pick it up and just go off the cover in the back. And so you're picking up Fast and the Furious and The Fast and the Furious. Is there a difference? They're the same movie. Why do they look older? Right? So now this one returns. It brings back Paul Walker. It brings back Vin Diesel in a full role this time. It brings back Michelle Rodriguez. It brings back Jordana Brewster. It's a return to form, right? You get the original cast, which was a fun movie. I remember at this time when this came out, it was exciting, me and my brother, because it was like, oh, they're bringing back the originals. Cool. This is actually like a real sequel. And that's what it was. It was kind of like, this is this first sequel that's really connecting to the original. So that was cool. And then they introduce more action elements in this movie. They kind of steer away from the racing, and they go into that more traditional stuff. This movie, yet again, is directed by Justin Lin. And then Letty dies. Letty dies in this movie. Believe she gets shot in the head. And let's take tabs on who's dead and who's alive in these movies, and all that fun stuff. So now Fast and the Furious 4 is one that really gets the wheels turning. And then we get, which I think, now the Blu-ray copy I have of this, the poster says, there's a review on the front that says the best in the series. And I believe this is the best in the series. I believe if you're going to bury one movie in a time capsule for future audiences, for one movie from the Fast and the Furious franchise, I would say Fast 5 is peak Fast and Furious. I think that most people will feel that way. I think it's the first one that, not that the other ones obviously didn't have action, but it really changes the focus 100% to something else besides racing. Because realistically, if this movie stayed with the idea of just being a racing movie, it wouldn't have made it this long. It's just, racing is like a one-trick pony. How many fucking times can you see street races and girls shaking their ass at street races? Now, one thing I'll give credit to with Fast and Furious, they at least give you one scene of street racing. It's like they have to do it. Every movie, there's at least, and the new one is no different, as I'll get to in a second, if I ever get to it, if you're still listening, that is. They give you one scene that kind of references what these movies used to be, right? It's just a quick scene of somebody racing, somebody having a traditional race, and they do that. Now, as I said, Fast 5 puts racing to the back and focuses more on a heist that they're doing, and then you get, a combination of characters that we've seen in the past, right? So you get Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, Jordana Brewster, but then you get Tyrese, plucked out of Too Fast, Too Furious, Ludacris, plucked out of Too Fast, Too Furious. You get Han, who is dead, and you get his girlfriend, played by Gal Gadot, right? And you get these characters, and now this starts a little thing where, when is this movie set? And then you find out timeline-wise that this movie is set before Tokyo Drift. So Han is still alive for a reason. It also led to every time you were seeing a new one of these movies, you're waiting for Han to die. You're essentially sitting there like, is he going to die in this one? Is he going to die in this one? And, but Fast 5 is a fun fucking movie. And then you get The Rock in this movie. And this is The Rock now. Listen, I love The Rock. I grew up a wrestling fan. I was always a fan of The Rock. His movies, his acting, he's been doing it for a while now. He made a lot of money. He has a lot of success with it. In the last couple of years, I've gotten to a little bit of a Rock fatigue. I'm not going to lie. He's just like, sometimes he needs to take a break and stuff like that. But The Rock in this movie as I said, this is peak Fast and the Furious. This is the peak love of The Rock as well. He's just like perfect in this movie with his one-liners, and he's jacked out of his mind. He takes up the whole screen in the scenes he's in. Vin Diesel and him have some fights in the movie, and it's ridiculous because love Vin Diesel to hate him. Like, come on, he's not even the same species as The Rock. Let's face it, The Rock would eat this guy in real life, and in real life they had a beef, which is why he hasn't popped up in the franchise since, I believe, Furious 7. Right? Was he? No, he was in Fate of the Furious, I think. But he hasn't popped up since that 8th one, because then he wasn't in 9. But as the franchise went on, he became a big part of the franchise, right? So then you have Fast 5, successful film, peak, as I said. Then you get Fast and the Furious 6. So Fast 5, as I said, my favorite in the franchise, next to the original. Fast 5 also has the best title, and the least confusing of these titles, right? Fast 5, that's it. Now, maybe you're going to think for a minute that with the next one, it's going to be Fast 6. It's not. It's going to be Fast and Furious 6. Not Fast and the Furious 6. It's going to be Fast and Furious 6. More title confusion for you there. I know you love that. Whole cast returns. The whole gang, right? The Rock, everybody. And then Michelle Rodriguez comes back. Remember she was dead? Well, she's not anymore. I'm not going to get into a count of the most ridiculous things that happen in this movie, because that's an entirely different episode. Maybe I will do that episode. I need to honestly rewatch them, the whole series. But one of the top things that's the most ridiculous happens in Fast and the Furious 6, and that is Vin Diesel essentially flying across a bridge, bouncing out of a car, his gorilla body type, and catching Michelle Rodriguez midair and landing safely. That's one of the most ridiculous, peak ridiculous Fast and Furious things. Now, Fast and Furious 6, pretty good movie, a little less than, it's more of the same of what goes down in Fast 5, but a little less, not as good as a movie. Now, if I had to say, like if I had to pick my favorite era of Fast and the Furious movies, it's probably Fast 5, Fast 6, Fast 7. I think, and I'll get to the reasons behind that right now, but while they're filming what will be later called Furious 7, not a bad fucking title either. I like it. I think it goes with the whole Fast 5 thing. So Furious 7, while they're filming it, Paul Walker tragically dies in this movie. Well, not in the movie, but in real life. And now you get Jason Statham joining the cast, and he's actually the guy who killed Han and all this shit. I think it was the post-credits of the, Fast and the Furious 6, if I remember correctly. And now you have this tragedy happen. They come and they use Paul Walker's brother and CGI, and they finish the film. And there's some scenes that are a little wonky, but for the most part it works. And especially the ending, when they're driving away from each other, it's become kind of like a little classic thing, and the fucking music's on. It's sad. And I think in this, for a movie that gets cartoonish and gets ridiculous, a movie series rather, I think that was a really heartfelt moment. I think they did it properly, and it was a good farewell to the character, as far as like the on-screen for now. So Furious 7 is a pretty good movie too. I think it's better than Fast and Furious 6. Not better than Fast 5. They had that on-screen, that real-life tragedy that kind of affected it. But, yeah, fine movie. Also, if you're keeping count of who's dead and who's coming back and this and stuff. So we lost Michelle Rodriguez. She came back. We had Han, who died, then was in the prequel, which made sense. But now they catch up with that timeline, and Han is dead. You also had Gal Gadot's character die in Fast and Furious 6. So now those three characters, Michelle Rodriguez is back, but Han, as of now, as of Furious 7, Han and fucking Gal Gadot, whatever the fuck her name is dead, are dead. So, as we're keeping count of that. Then you get Fate of the Furious, which Fate and the Furious, I have to watch again. Because I don't even know what happened in that movie anymore. I haven't watched it in a while, to be honest. I remember it was kind of like, all right, it gets, As the movies go on, they get crazier and crazier, and obviously you go to expect it with this franchise. It's not like a new thing. You kind of have to watch it like you're watching a cartoon, because they're ridiculous. And as I said, Fast and the Furious 8 is called The Fate of the Furious, right? Honestly, would have been a good title if that was the last one. I partly was saying maybe it should be the last one. And the interesting thing is, they reference Paul Walker a lot in these movies, and especially after he's dead, because his character is not dead. It's just the real, this real life incident happened, but the character isn't dead, so they kind of reference that he's still around. You get Jason Statham in here. You get The Rock. Now Jason Statham, and this is another ongoing trope in these movies, is like the villains of the movie becoming, on the side of the heroes, right? You get it with The Rock. He's a good guy now. You get it with almost everybody. Jason Statham, who, still doesn't make sense to me that they become friendly because he killed Han, and, whatever. Charlize Theron's the villain in this one, and she's pretty good. Kurt Russell is in it as well. I gotta love Kurt Russell. I mean, I've talked about my love. You also get appearances from Scott Eastwood as, Mr. Nobody's son, or whatever the fuck he is, Little Nobody. A fun movie, but doesn't really reach the peaks that the franchise had reached with the fifth installment, right? And that's really the problem, I think, with these movies, that after the fifth one, and then after the sixth one, and then after Paul Walker dying, this is the big thing. Paul Walker being, now he may have been your favorite actor, your not favorite actor. I think he was a pretty good actor, and I liked Paul Walker for the most part. But I think the most important thing, his, influence or his role in these films was very important, because he balanced, that kind of musclehead thing that Vin Diesel has, right? Vin Diesel is the grumbly, fucking bald, muscled guy, and Vin Diesel, the Paul Walker, rather, is more of your everyman, right? He's the more relatable, I think, of the characters. He's the more, human being, the human-like character. And so, when his absence, that's the thing I felt the most in Fate of the Furious, where, he wasn't there. I felt that, obviously they got some newer people in there, like Scott Eastwood and stuff like that, but you just felt that void, and I think that's what the problem was with Fate and the Furious. If I had it my way, which, listen, these movies make a lot of fucking money, but I would have said Furious 7 was the chef's kiss, goodbye, end the series on a kind of high note, or the highest note that it could possibly end at. But they did this one, and they did it without Paul Walker, and it's all right. It's ridiculous. It's more of the same. Then you get Fast 9. Fast 9. Now, full disclosure of Fast 9, I might have talked about this on the podcast, but Fast 9, or Fast 9, this is the weirdest title out of them all, because it's really F9, The Fast Saga. That's right. That's what's on posters. Go look it up. F9, The Fast Saga. I don't even know what the fuck they were doing with that title. But so, following the traditional bringing in new cast members, you get John Cena in this movie. Now, The Rock and Vin Diesel had on-screen drama. They didn't like each other. They didn't get along. The Rock and Jason Statham go and they do the Hobbs and Shaw spinoff, which isn't a bad movie. I actually prefer that movie over some of the Fast and Furious movies that I dislike. But, it is what it is. It's them running around all muscled and saying bad jokes and stuff like that. It's not the greatest movie in the world, but it's decent. You get Idris Elba being the villain, calling himself Black Superman. Has some fun. Little different spin on the Fast and Furious franchise. So in between, I think it was after Fast 8, they do that spinoff. And then we come back with Fast 9 or F9, The Fast Saga. Now this film, as I said, John Cena joins the cast. He's Dominick Toretto's brother, right? Dominick Toretto's brother. And the funny thing about that is, does he look even a little bit like Dominick Toretto, like Vin Diesel? They're not yet again, not even the same species here. I mean, it's just funny that they're playing brothers. A lot of scenes, too. Like, John Cena's wearing these big suits. and he's got like the big cross hanging over, and it is ridiculous. But so John Cena, he's fun. I like John Cena. I like him in the Peacemaker role. I think he's a pretty good actor. In this movie, sometimes he feels a little bit like he doesn't belong there. Obviously, you could tell, like, Vin Diesel's like, I don't get along with The Rock. I'm going to get another wrestler and put him in the movie. And that's what he did. Because he is, producer on these movies, too. And, whatever. I remember, though, I saw this movie, and now there's ridiculous things that happen in this movie. As there is all these movies. Han comes back. Apparently, they try to explain it in the movie and stuff like that. It is what it is. But it's just, yet again, another character that we thought was dead that's back. Star Wars gets sometimes a bad rap because Emperor Palpatine, and this one came back and that one. But, like, Boba Fett, which everybody thought was alive for years. But these movies, though. What's that line in the Star Wars movie? Nobody's ever truly gone. What he says in The Last Jedi or whatever about Harrison Ford. Like, in Fast and the Furious world, nobody's ever truly gone. Nobody. Because fucking Han comes back. Michelle Rodriguez comes back. Nobody is really dead. They die on screen, like, violently. And we'll talk about the new one in a second as I get to it. But full disclosure, as I said, I probably talk about this on the podcast. I went to this movie with my brother. We watched it. Listen, there's a lot of flashbacks in this movie. And I think one thing, and I'll talk about it when I talk about Fast X. Fast and Furious franchise, love them, hate them, how we feel about them. They do a good job of, like, changing history as far as in the world's mythology, right? Whether it's cutting Jason Statham into the scene where Han dies, or showing a character that wasn't there in another scene. And this movie, I'll give Fast 9 this. They give Vin Diesel, they give Dominick Toretto a brother that you never knew about before, and they tell this story in flashbacks. This story ties into the original, where, like, Dominick went to jail for beating the guy, and you get a little bit of explanation on that, and their father's death and stuff like that. Now, one of the things is they do the flashbacks, but, like, rather than de-aging, which I don't know if that would have worked. Listen, I don't know if it would have fucking worked if they would have de-aged Vin Diesel and John Cena, and they would have. I don't know if it would have worked. It probably wouldn't have. But you have these two younger actors playing them, and it's like a lot of that was kind of like it was kind of maybe the actor playing Vin Diesel was like, I don't know. I didn't really buy it. Even the guy that was playing John Cena. But they use it. They use this device, and they give you a little bit more backstory. So parts of it were cool. But it did, take my brother and I out of it as we were watching it. We weren't really loving the movie. We were sitting in a theater. And then, one thing about Fast and Furious, they're good for throwing cameos and shit at you, and new fucking characters, famous actors entering, and Helen Mirren, and this one and that one. Fucking Cardi B showed up about halfway through this movie, and honestly, me and my brother just looked at each other and said, all right, let's go. We weren't really enjoying the movie anyway, and we kind of walked out on it. Now, I've since watched it, and it's not my favorite. It's sloppy. It's kind of like, yet again, John Cena's not bad, but he kind of doesn't, like, fit in there sometimes. They are villain, and yet again, the same trope. They hate each other. He's the villain, and then at the end of the movie, he's not the villain, right? So that leads us to Fast 10, right? I just talked about these movies for 34 minutes, almost. And, yeah, we're finally up to Fast 10. I'm fucking exhausted. So as I said, Fast 9, we walked out of. Not really my favorite. I remember kind of looking at my brother, too, and we were like, I'm good. I don't know. You kind of get to the point with these movies that it's like, all right, it's the same old. How many times are you going to watch the same thing happen? The same cartoonish stuff. And my argument is always like, listen, people could say like, oh, superhero movies, they're no different, stuff like that. And I get that. I get that. But these movies at one point were grounded in reality. So after a while, you're kind of like, all right, didn't they used to steal fucking DVD players and whatever the fuck, radios off trucks? So when you're seeing them do superhero things, and yet again, I'm not going to get into the superhero antics, but is it in this one when Vin Diesel steps on the ground and like the Hulk and the ground cracks? I don't even remember which one it is, but as I said, when you watch these movies, you got to kind of check your mind at the door, and it is what it is. They're basically the low-life Avengers. But so for when Fast X was coming out, and as I said with Fast 9, I kind of was like, I'm kind of done with the franchise. And if I walked out of a franchise or walked out of the theater, I'm kind of bored with it, right? It's kind of run its course. But I will tell you that curiosity gets the best of you. It really does get the best of you. And here we are, Fast 10, the newest in the franchise. They've cut the title yet again to just Fast X, which, listen, anytime you get up to a 10th installment, the X is tempting. The X is very tempting, right? I did it with Jason X. You have to. It just looks cool, and especially for a movie that features a lot of cars. Now, the interesting thing about this movie was it was supposed to be directed by Justin Lin. He does get screenplay and story credit in this movie, but he ended up having some kind of fallout or whatever with Vin Diesel while they were making this movie, and he's not the director anymore. Now you got a guy, Louis Leterrier, who took over, and he did the first two Transporter movies, and he did The Incredible Hulk from 2008, and so he's done a couple of movies. I wouldn't call him the greatest movies in the world, but he's done a couple of movies, action related and stuff like that. So he comes in, and let's talk about this movie. So this film, as I said, I wasn't too excited. I would see the trailers, and I was kind of like, oh, here we go again. With Vin Diesel's full-on potato head, and the returning characters. Now you're throwing more people in there, right? You got Brie Larson's in this one now. Charlize Theron's back again, but they're constantly just throwing characters in there, bringing characters back from the dead. And this movie starts, and then you got, of course, Jason Momoa, who's playing the villain, right? And it showed in the trailers that he was actually the son of the guy from Fast 5. And so this movie begins with, and yet again, I will say, hate it, love it. The fucking Fast and Furious franchise are great at rewriting history, great at like editing stuff in the mythology and making it that people weren't there and stuff like that. And light spoilers here, but this movie starts with sequences from Fast 5. And there's new scenes with the villain from that movie and Jason Momoa, playing his son. Now, one thing they did, I got to give credit as like somebody who watches a lot of movies, and my eye's pretty keen on this stuff, and I don't know for a fact how they did this or if they used like the same fucking film stock or whatever, but we're living in a world now, everything's digital, but when they show those new scenes with Jason Momoa and the villain from Fast 5's father, one of the things I have to give credit for is like they kind of make the sequences look, as far as like the filmic look, exactly like they looked from Fast 5. So they're kind of like intercut in there, nearly perfect. I don't know what they did. Like I said, I don't know. I got to go back and look at that. But that was something I noticed, because even when the new scenes, when the movie started and went to present day and stuff like this, it looked, noticeably more HD and kind of like more to what the last few Fast and Furious looked like. So they must have did something. But to their credit, they made it. I don't know if they de-aged that guy who was the villain in Fast 5, but it definitely looks like they might have, because it looks kind of seamless. So I'll give him credit there. Now, with this movie, as I said, Jason Momoa is the villain. I remember seeing trailers, and I was kind of like, all right, I don't hate Jason Momoa. He's a little bit like, some of his roles are a little bit, sometimes, he's a little bit, he kind of plays this kind of like generic fucking character a lot of the time, I just recently talked about the Zack Snyder films, and I do like him as Aquaman. I think, like, particularly in that other cut of, like, Justice League, he was more of, like, a bro going, yeah, rock on, all this shit. But, like, in the other one, the extended Zack Snyder cut, he's definitely better. And I will say, I liked Jason Momoa in this film. I thought he was absolutely fucking ridiculous. And he was one of the parts in the trailers I was like, I don't know, they're just getting another big name. And I think he works in this movie. I will say I think he's honestly one of the better parts of this movie. As far as just, he's fun to watch. I think they gave him free range, 150%. I think he signed up with this movie. They probably like told him, "Hey, we want you to be in fucking Fast X as the villain." And he's probably like, okay, but like, I want to do whatever the fuck I want to do, and I don't know how the character was written, but the shit that he does in this movie, and I'm not gonna get into it, it's not like spoilerific shit, but it's like just the way his character acts, or the way he's like at some parts he's flamboyant and he's got painted nails, and I got like I'm laughing because he took like big swings and he took like risky swings too, but like he's having fun. He's having fun in this movie, and he's bringing something different to a movie franchise. Like, yeah, we're 10 movies in. The villains have kind of gotten, a little bit stale. Some people have compared him to like Joker, where he kind of feels like the Joker a little bit. I can see that. I can see that 100% because he's just out of his mind, doing ridiculous things. And listen, I would never think to say that Jason Momoa should have played the Joker or anything like that, but like seeing a role like this, and it's like, oh wow, he could have maybe done something. If the Joker was this giant fucking hulking character, maybe. But he plays a fun, humorous, psychotic role. Not all of his things that he does like land, and they're a little weird. But you can't help but like giggle, and like, I was nudging my wife and being like, wow, this is ridiculous. At one point, because they do the street racing scene, as I said, they do in all these movies, there's one sequence that's like street racing heavy, and he shows up, and I don't know what the fuck he's even wearing. Credits to the wardrobe department, or I don't know if Jason Momoa might even shown up in those clothes, but he's wearing like a lot of the time in this he's wearing like snakeskin jackets and stuff like that, and baggy. Like in this scene though, he comes in like these silky shirt and pants like that. He essentially looks like a fucking genie. Like he looks like, I don't even know what he's wearing. He's got like old women's glasses on, and as I said, sometimes he's flamboyant. He's talking about fucking dancing at one point, and Swan Lake. It's ridiculous, but I think a lot of it works. And as I said, he brings something different to the table. He's a little bit more fun, and it's fun watching him because he's so cartoonish. And I mean, Vin Diesel's cartoonish for his own reasons, but like Vin Diesel's just so serious and grumbling and mad and whatever. And this guy's jumping around saying all this random shit. And, then at one point they're in Rome and he's doing a lot of Italian stuff, bravo, and all this shit. It's ridiculous. Does it work all the time? No, it doesn't work all the time, but him dressed as a genie with old women's glasses. And I don't know. He did better. And yet again, not to knock Jason Momoa, I do like Jason Momoa, but like he did better than I expected him to do in this movie. And I think yet again, I think he just fucking did whatever the fuck he wanted to do. I think he was like, all right, I'm going to do this. I want my character to look like this and say this and whatever. I would be surprised if there wasn't some improv of the dialogue and stuff like that with him, because he just seemed like he was having a ball. But so overall, he was definitely one of my favorite parts of the movie. And the movie, listen, the shit that they tie into Fast 5, they do it in a good way. It feels organic. I remember seeing the trailers and being like, oh, okay, so this is his son. This is going to be forced. This is going to be forced. And it doesn't really feel that way. They do it in a way where it does feel like, yes, he was there. In Fast 5, they splice him in and make it like he was. So it works for the most part. Now, as far as storyline, it's the same old bullshit, right? He's coming for revenge. He's their son. He's the guy's son. Now Dominick's obviously got his son. At one point, Dominick's fucking you see a car like doing donuts and shit, and it's his son. It's got to be like 7 driving the car, and Vin Diesel's teaching his son about driving. Listen, it's, as I said, you come with this movie and you expect this stuff. The movies, the Fast and Furious movies, they've almost become sort of like a spoof of themselves, whether it's like the barbecue with, the Coronas, and it's just, that's what you come to expect, right? I mean, I remember the Universal ride that I went to, the the Fast and Furious ride, which that ride sucked. It was terrible. But I think there was even like empty bottles of Corona on like the queue, the line, like waiting, like when you're walking at the things, you see empty. It's just become this thing that everybody knows. And they ham it up and they do it all the time. But as the movie goes on, same old stuff, right? I think for the most part, I did enjoy the movie. I think it was definitely better than Fast 9 or F9, the Fast Saga. It cuts more to the chase. Obviously, there's not all these flashbacks that movie had, trying to build, the history between him and like John Cena. There's ridiculous stuff. There's one point, I don't know how many times am I going to say ridiculous in this podcast, but there's one point where there's I'm sure you've seen the trailers where the giant bomb is rolling in Rome and they're hitting it with their cars and stuff like that. Now, the one thing is, like, I feel like some of the characters, because they spread them out, they spread them out where, like, these characters are this place and Michelle Rodriguez is somewhere else. It feels a little bit like all over the place, constantly, just like, recent Marvel movies, constantly jumping all over the map. Fucking Antarctica, Brazil, Rome, just constantly traveling the world. Kurt Russell doesn't pop up in this. Scott Eastwood does pop up in this. As I said, Brie Larson comes up in this. Same old stupid jokes that they've told 1,000 times with Tyrese and Ludacris fighting and all that shit. But good action. I think, like, good fight scenes. Obviously the car stuff is in there. It's heavy-handed. Vin Diesel could never die. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about spoilers. But yeah, overall, thought the movie was decent. If you're going to this movie, you know what you're getting into, right? Fast and Furious, you're not looking to have your life changed. But as I said, this movie wasn't like the last one where I was like sitting there getting bored and kind of looking at my phone. And then once Cardi B came, I was out. A little bit more engaging. And then, yeah. So let's get into spoilers. Let's get into a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to fucking spoil the whole movie, but we'll get into some stuff. So John Cena is in this film, and he feels a little bit more natural in this movie, right? He comes, and he's gone fucking protecting Dom's son, and he's doing that. And they have kind of like a fun little road trip kind of moment where they're going out there and doing their thing, and he's wearing funny clothes and shit like that. Jordana Brewster's role, a little small. Obviously, it's always the funny thing with that, because even in, I think, the last 1 or 8, whenever it was, Paul Walker's car showed up at the end, right, for the barbecue, and like, so Paul Walker's character is supposed to still be alive. But then that kind of limits, what Jordana Brewster's character is doing, because she's kind of there, but then she's not there all the time. Then they say Brian's with the kids or whatever the fuck. It's weird. Will there be like a CGI Paul Walker in one of these? Probably. I think in the next one it's very possible. I mean, at this point, who knows? But the movie... So the movie does a couple things, right? First of all, fucking John Cena sacrificed himself. And he dies in a ball of fire. He blows up. And so that's the end of John Cena for now. But is it? Because these characters have come back before. So is it possible that John Cena may just come back with like a slight burn on his face? Sure. Because we know Han came back. We know Letty came back. And there's the end of this movie is where it really amps up the Fast and Furious. I mean, like, Jason Momoa's character's relentless, and he's fucking blowing up things, blowing up cities, blowing up Rome. At the end of the movie, he's fucking blowing up a dam. And then essentially, like, Vin Diesel drives through a ball of fire on a dam with his son in the car, and they literally get down the ramp or the fucking dam that they use as a ramp, and he pulls down it, avoids the explosion, and then lands in the water with his son. And then, like, there's all bombs around the dam, and they're on foot, and they're standing there, and boom, cliffhanger ending. I mean, you see that, and you see, like, that's it, that's going to blow, they're on foot. I think the plane with Tyrese and Ludacris crashed, so I don't know if they're dead, but yet again, is anybody ever really dead in the Fast and Furious franchise? Letty crawls out of fucking a prison with Charlize Theron in Antarctica, and they're on the other side of the world. And then a fucking submarine comes out. It's like you can't even. You almost like you say this stuff, and it's like, is this a fever dream? Was I high when this happened? That's the thing about these movies. Even when I was just talking about Fast 8, where I know there's some icy escapades in that movie, but there's so much in these movies that your brain like dumps it. You know, you can't even hold on to all the ridiculous shit that happens in the Fast and Furious movies. That's why, like, Fast 8, like, I prioritized and held on to the important stuff in this franchise. Because even just talking about them throughout this podcast, that's all off my brain. I haven't watched them in a while. So if I'm wrong about some stuff, I'm sorry about that. Forgive me. But your brain essentially can only hold on to so much Fast and Furious knowledge, so it has to dump it. But as I say, the thing about the submarine, if that's not cartoonish enough, the movie's final sequence, as that rises out of the icy waters, who comes out but Gal Gadot's character? That's right. Take a minute. Her character, Han's ex, the whole reason why he went to Tokyo after she died and this and that. She is alive. Movie ends. Okay, Michelle Rodriguez sees this, movie ends. I don't know. As I said, I did not hate this movie, but I almost, as the movie was going on, because I had a hunch that they were going to bring her character back, but as the movie was going on, I was kind of like, well, maybe they're not going to bring the character back, and I was kind of relieved. I was like, all right, people need to stay dead. Some people need to stay dead in this franchise, because there needs to be, like, consequences. I know it's essentially like, listen, you watch a superhero movie, I know characters come back from the dead and stuff like that, comics and all that shit. But, like, there's got to be some kind of, you got to feel like your characters are in a little danger. And that's the biggest problem, I think, with the Fast and Furious movies now, is like, you don't fear any fate. You see what I did there? Fate of the Furious. You don't fear the fates of anybody, because you know they might not really be dead. Even when I saw John Cena go into a ball of fire and crash into those guys to save Dom and his son, I'm not thinking John Cena's. I'm thinking like he's going to come back, because look what happened at the end of this fucking movie. Gal Gadot's character pops her fucking head out of the submarine or whatever the fuck that was, and she's all like, hey, I'm alive. And then the movie ends. And like, the last time we saw her, she, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm going off the top of my head, but I think it was in Fast and Furious 6, right? And I think she fell into like a plane tire or some shit like that on the runway, right? You're dying. You're getting, probably getting dismembered violently. You know, like your body is getting broken into pieces or whatever the fuck's happening with that. You're getting crushed. How is she back? How does she, and then if she's back, furthermore, how is she not like sewn together like fucking Frankenstein? This is the only thing with these movies. This is where they kind of, I've said this in the past when I've talked to people about them, like, they almost kind of insult your intelligence as a viewer, because you're sitting there going like, and yet again, it's a popcorn movie. It's fucking action packed. You're not watching it. You're not giving this movie an Oscar, right? But they almost insult your intelligence, because it's like, all right, how many fucking people are going to die and you're going to bring them back? You know, Michelle Rodriguez, as I said, shot in the head, right? Han shot in his car. Did it blow up to the car in Tokyo, and then they splice it in with Jason Statham? And then not only is like, okay, we're gonna fucking bring this guy back, but now we're gonna bring this guy back, and him and fucking Jason Statham are gonna like work together. So now she's alive. She joins the trope of bringing people back from the dead in the Fast and Furious franchise, and it is what it is. Now, it does end on a cliffhanger. I think this is one of the first that like blatantly ends on like a cliffhanger, where like the walls closing in on Dom, or the walls that are going to explode and drown Dom and his son. But yeah, this is the first one. Now, as far as this was supposed to be, so there's supposed to be 10 and there's supposed to be 11. These are supposed to be the final two Fast and Furious movies, which 11 is a good number to end on. You know, but now, I just saw like a recent interview of Vin Diesel, and he's talking about like that maybe the studio wants to do this as a trilogy. So there's possibly 11, and then it concludes with 12. I don't know. I mean, listen, at curiosity killed the cat. As I said, curiosity gets the best of me. I'm going to go see it. I'm going to go see 11. And if there's a 12, I'm probably going to go see it. But is a 12 necessary? I don't know. I don't know how it's doing financially right now. I remember reading something, it wasn't doing like as great as I think they expected. You know, it was making its money, but I don't think like the Thursday previews and stuff like that were that great. My theater was like, a few people were in my theater. It wasn't packed or anything like that, but I think there's that fatigue, you know, there's that, like, as I said, just, there's a time to end things. Maybe the time to end things would have been Furious 7. That didn't happen, but what are you going to do? But now we're at the point where, what's fucking Gal Gadot's story? Like, what is she going to say? Why is she not dead? And why did she not go with Han or try to contact Han or anything like that? Does Han know about it? They're going to drop some fucking knowledge like that? Because, like, when Letty was dead, it was all like, oh, yeah, she lost her memory. They did that fucking soap opera trope. She had amnesia, right? What are we going to do with this now? Now she's alive. She didn't have no fucking amnesia. I just love how everybody's so forgiving, too. As I said, the tropes of the villains becoming, you know, the good guys, joining the good guys, like Jason Statham and Han. Jason Statham's not in a lot of this movie. He pops up at some point. It's cool to see him. I like Jason Statham as Deckard Shaw. And him and Han are like, you know, fighting off guys together. So it's just like, all right. If you like the Fast and Furious movies, you're gonna go see this. You're gonna enjoy it to the most part. They've gotten cartoonish. They've gotten ridiculous. I wouldn't say this one's like a great movie or anything. I think it was fun though for what it was. 2 hours, 20 minutes. And as far as like, it was better than Furious 9, Fast 9, whatever the fuck you want to call it. It was better than that one. No Cardi B is a positive for me. You know, if you don't throw Cardi B in there. You got little appearances by like Helen Mirren and Rita Moreno, the classic West Side Story actress, and who else is in there? I mean, obviously Charlize Theron, but you got a lot of too much to handle. You know, a lot of people. But Jason Momoa, he gets the thumbs up for whatever the fuck he does in this movie, because he's, as I said, wasn't expecting to like his character as much as I did, but he just goes like balls to the wall. And the wardrobe. I mean, I got to find some pictures of him in that wardrobe. I was trying to snap some pictures while I was in the movie, but I couldn't get a good shot. But yeah, it looks like a genie. He's in purple. There's a lot of purple going on. I wonder if there was like, he was doing kind of like a Joker on purpose, because he had a purple car at one point. Vin Diesel. Oh, I don't know. I always say this, but I don't hate Vin Diesel, but he's a hard actor to watch sometimes. His stares in this movie's got a lot of intense stares, and you can't help but laugh at the stares he does. It's just, he's a funny character. But yeah, Fast X, you know, it's not gonna turn you around if you aren't a Fast and Furious fan, or you haven't seen any of these movies. But it's decent. It's fine. I wouldn't say like it's necessary to go run out and go see it, you know, for the theater experience. If you want to do it, obviously it'll probably be on Peacock or something in a couple weeks. Once it makes the bulk of its money, that's what's been happening lately. So, like, if you could wait for it, but yeah, I don't know. Is Paul Walker coming back? I have a feeling Paul Walker's coming back. I was actually surprised that there wasn't anything post credits, but there is something post credits. And to continue with the spoilers, so as I said, The Rock and Vin Diesel did have like on-set feud, and shit wasn't working out. But guess what? The Rock pops up in a post-credit scene, and Jason Momoa's character contacted him as well, and now The Rock's got a gray goatee, and he calls him a sumbitch, and end scene, right? And I gotta say, I'm actually excited that The Rock's coming back. I think it helped a little bit. You know, he went off, he did the Hobbs and Shaw movie, he wasn't in 9, and now to get The Rock back, it's actually like, it gets me a little excited, because I'm like, all right, and especially knowing, now, you know, I don't know if that helps for a lot of other people, but knowing the on-screen, the real-life feud between him and Vin Diesel, I want to see where this goes on screen. Like, I want to see, you know, if they get into a fight, their characters get into a fight, if they kind of play with that, they play with the real-world stuff. Did they really make up? I don't know. I remember, like, a year ago, Vin Diesel, I think while they were filming this one, Vin Diesel, like, made an open post to The Rock, like an apology. I don't know. Here's what it comes down to, though, and I'll be honest with you. Hobbs and Shaw was decent, whatever, spin-off movie. But The Rock hasn't really had a lot of success lately. You know, as far as like, Black Adam was a fucking bomb and a disaster, and he was trying to, rework the hierarchy in DC Universe, and he fucking eliminated himself from existence. That's how he basically did that, because he tried to introduce, Henry Cavill at the end of that movie, and the movie just didn't fucking work. And, he's had some strikeouts, so I could see why he's like, all right, Fast and Furious is going to be ending. Let me maybe go step back into there. People like me in that role. It's a successful franchise. Maybe I could help everybody and myself out. And so I understand it. But I'm excited for him to come back. But yeah, will Paul Walker, pop up? I think so. I think either in 11 or 12. My prediction now is you're getting some kind of Paul Walker, whether it's a CGI appearance or something, you're getting something. And that's the podcast, guys. That was an hour. That was an hour just talking about the Fast and Furious franchise, my triumphant return to the podcasting after getting married, as I said. If this is the first time you listen to the podcast, this is what it's like. I just rant and rave. I talk about movies. I went on a little spiral with the Fast and Furious franchise. We talked about it for a while. Maybe I didn't talk about the new one as much as I should have, but I don't care. It's my podcast. Check out the other episodes if you haven't. As I said, I did Guardians recently. I got those From the Vault episodes. I try to do a little bit of everything. What's coming out soon? Little Mermaid's coming out next week. And that Sebastian Maniscalco movie about his father. That looks pretty funny. Robert De Niro. I'm a big Sebastian Maniscalco fan, so I'll probably be checking out both of those next week. And, we'll do some other stuff. I mean, listen, I've talked about it on this podcast before. I'm going to talk about it again. Beetlejuice 2 is coming. And now it's getting real. And I think I might just do an episode focusing on that. So maybe that'll come this week. As I said, though, check out the other episodes on Spotify, iTunes. Rate, review, give your thoughts, all that fun stuff. And, I'm on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at Dom Solo Reels. Sometimes I post some funny stuff, some movie-related stuff and all that. And as I said at the beginning of the episode, check out the new episode of It's a Long Road podcast, the Rambo podcast that I do with my friend Ryan, where we're talking about Rambo 4 and Sylvester Stallone's wacky hair and big head. Check out the new episode of that on Spotify and iTunes and all that. So thanks for listening. Have a good night.